I want to entertain some notions, possibilities. This again, like entertain, right? Like it's for fun, amusement. And we're going to kind of use some inductive reasoning. Basically means there's not enough information or evidence to really draw like good conclusions or find correlations between things. So what do I want to talk about? The woo. There, I came out and said it. Let's talk about Sasquatch woo, things that can't be explained, like possible teleportation, walking into solid objects, shape-shifting, orbs, telepathic connections, other weird stuff like UFOs seen with possible Sasquatch. Now, before we all get started in this, I want to make it really, really abundantly clear that this is kind of almost beyond speculative, and it's one of those what ifs. One of those what ifs for fun, to see where it goes. If we are just to assume, just pretend that all of those eyewitness accounts that people have seen with the woo is fact. So we're pretending, giving them the benefit of the doubt, that all those things being seen, that is very unusual, super unusual, hard to grasp and accept, but doesn't necessarily mean it's not true, could potentially show us the bigger picture, which I think is kind of fun. So remember, fun, just for fun. This doesn't mean this is my opinion or I have anything to back it. This is me building a story in my head based off this little bit, a small amount of evidence, most of it anecdotal, that suggests some of these topics, like alternative dimensions. So now that I've basically covered this, I hope it's going to become clear that what I say beyond this point is for fun. It doesn't mean that I'm wrong, though it doesn't necessarily mean I'm right. Because let's face it, this information, these anecdotal stories, there's no way to connect it with anything else easily yet until we have more information. So until then, let's just have fun with it and see where it goes, okay? Now, when I put this all together in my head and pretending it's all fact, that there's ways to connect it all together without adding in assumptions and presumptions, which I'm going to be doing a ton of, like a lot of. I think we could paint a very extravagant and interesting story. So that's what we're going to do right now. Are you guys ready for my take on this? Okay, I have a story for you guys. Now, let's just assume, as I've been saying over and over again, that teleportation is real. Vanishing into thin air is real. Shape-shifting is real when it comes to these beings and other cryptids. Seeing them go on to alien crafts, orbs, other strange occurrences which cannot be explained within our natural physical realm. I think if we assume they're all factual, that it might be suggesting something else. So let's look at the potential larger picture of what this could be. Again, my opinion, for fun. So now let's get ready for that story. One of my favorite shows on this planet, all the planets of the multiverse, is Stargate SG-1. I know, I'm a nerd, a glorified nerd. If it wasn't for being a nerd, I wouldn't have had the incentive to go above and beyond and become a super nerd. Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 8, for those of you that want to go and track it down. And this is, by far, my most favorite episode of the whole entire series. And I'll explain why. So this team, right, the premise of Stargate is they go through wormholes to different planets, okay? It's very sci-fi. And they encounter good and bad aliens, and they're fighting at this time these Goa'uld, which are parasitic type aliens that inhabit other alien species' bodies. And humans are one of the main hosts for this species. So at this time in the series, they're looking for technology to fight the Goa'uld, things to help them win. And so they hear about this planet called Gaia that has these amazing creatures and biodiversity, and these creatures can switch forms or totally go invisible at will, and they can never, ever seem to be captured. Because you see, the Goa'uld have also been trying to track down these animals for millennia and failing every single time, even with all their high technology. Okay, the Goa'uld are much more advanced than the humans at this time, so even the Goa'uld can't seem to get any of these animals on this planet. So the humans at SG-1 decide, you know what, let us try. Maybe we'll have better luck than the Goa'uld. They go to this planet, and they look for these creatures, especially this one flying creature that can fly and then turn invisible and just disappear. Like, sometimes teleport away, disappear. Speaking of teleportation, the Stargate, which is the gate that they use to go from one world to another, disappears the second they come through. Talk about weird, right? And all this weird stuff is happening on this planet, and it's assumed that the animals are the ones with these powers. Okay? So, to make the story interesting, of course, the Goa'uld are there again, Apophis, trying to hunt down these special animals with these incredible abilities to kind of break the rules of physics. And the humans and the Goa'uld get into a firefight, and a lot of them die. But they're teleported away. And when they wake up, they're with this really primitive group of like small individuals, these alien beings that have somehow brought them back to life. They're confused, right? Because they don't have any technology, this group. They're living in small little homes with thatched roofs, and they're kind of gatherers. They just seem to gather food around them. Now the humans are concerned for these clearly primitive alien species that have brought them into their care. And they keep telling them, you got to get away, the Goa'uld are going to come after you and kill you like they do with everything else. And these primitive aliens tell them that they're not going anywhere and that the humans are just young and they don't understand. You know, the humans are like, what? Why can't we get through these naive aliens that they need our help, and without it, they're in big trouble. And these aliens just don't seem to get it. Or is that the case? Okay, so the part that I love the most is at the very end. You find out that what's actually going on has nothing to do with these awesome creatures that inhabit this planet, that seem to have, you know, these miraculous powers and abilities to change like the fabric of space and to go invisible. Okay? Turns out, these primitive aliens are not so primitive at all. In fact, they ended up being one of the most advanced aliens in the whole entire series, one of the top 4. So what was really going on wasn't that these creatures had paranormal abilities or were shape-shifting or were going through portals or anything like that, not on their own accord, right? The reason they were able to do that was because this super advanced civilization that lived on the planet, that viewed from the naked eye looked like some primitive hunter-gatherer group. But in reality, they were one of the most advanced races and civilizations in the whole series, okay? And so they were the ones teleporting, cloaking, going beyond our physical understanding. From our perspective, it seemed like these creatures and animals had this amazing, incredible superpower. And so that's why the humans and the Goa'uld kept focusing on them when they had nothing to do with those amazing feats. Instead, it was because of this super advanced race that was looking over the whole planet and making sure everything stayed safe from possible threats. And that's the way they were so powerful and advanced that the Goa'uld, being super advanced, and the humans weren't much of a threat to them, and they could afford to be pacifist. And that's why they weren't afraid when the Goa'uld came. But this also explains, in an overarching view, what was actually going on. So I think this is where it gets really interesting. Okay? Let's assume for a moment that the stuff that we see going on, you know, like orbs, teleportation, all that, like I said earlier, is all fact. Maybe it suggests, like the Stargate story, that there's something even bigger at work and at play. If it's not like some other dimension or parallel world with or time, kind of like the way David Paulides suggests in Missing 411, maybe there's an even greater presence or force at play that's overseeing all of this. And so when we see orbs, when we see things that just can't be explained or make sense in the knowledge that we have of the way the physical world works, like shape-shifting, disappearing to thin air, cloaking, going into like a solid objects, maybe what we're seeing isn't that these cryptids actually have this ability, but maybe we're seeing the evidence of a greater force that oversees these creatures. So from our view, they have these abilities, but maybe the reality is someone else or something else is looking out for them. Okay, well that's it. That was it. That was just an interesting story of inductive reasoning. It's not bad. It's not necessarily good, but it is interesting, right? I mean, there's no proof whatsoever for all the things I just said. I made up a story with little bits of data and assuming a lot in order to find some type of correlation, and I threw in a bunch of my own ideas and thoughts to weave this story that sounds good, makes sense, but there's not enough information right now to say whether it's just a fantasy or if there's some reality to it. And that's okay. That's okay, like that's what drives us to push forward and ask the right questions, or fantasies, right? That use some type of inductive reasoning to build this fantasy world. And so even though it may be a fantasy, it may not be all right, it's given us as a human race the motivation and the questions to ask and get answers. And you can see that throughout history. So I don't think it's bad to speculate and come up with the what ifs, but I think it's important that we say what it is, and that's, we have a lot of anecdotal evidence, hearsay, and we don't have any evidence to actually support the hearsay yet. And so my stance, if you haven't noticed already, is I'm very conservative in my hypothesis. I don't want to make hard to accept claims because they're harder to prove. I'm all about finding out the capabilities of this hominid creature, but I do think that the first step, be able to validate that it exists itself. And the reason I want this is to make all of our lives easier. All of us that are putting a lot of effort and time and our own resources and expertise to go out there and learn more about this species. But when you try to convince someone that about this species by saying they can teleport and they can go through walls and cloak, it's a moot point if you haven't convinced them that it actually exists in the first place. You see what I mean? So I'm not against it, but I'm also not willing to go that far until I start with the basics, and that's just first proving to academia, to people, that they exist. And why do I want to do that? Because getting people with multidisciplinary backgrounds, getting funding, being able to cut through red tape, being able to do this in a national forest, state park, etc., wherever they are, all that stuff takes a lot of money and authorization and discipline and know-how. And anyone that's been doing this, especially field work, can tell you and will know that it's hard. It's hard to do it on your own, and it would be wonderful to get like some backup from people that know a lot more in their focused field. I hope you guys like this, and I hope it helps illustrate where I'm coming from. I want to know the capabilities. I want to see how much of the woo is true, but I refuse to focus on that seriously until we can get the basics out of the way of verifying that the hominid exists and whatever it may end up being. Anyway, hope that was entertaining and it was a fun view to look at the woo from. I have no problem speculating on it, but like I said, and this will be my finishing remark, it's not my main focus right now. So I'm happy to talk about it, speculate on it, but my main focus is going to be on just the hard evidence that supports a hypothesis that this creature exists. Because I know it's real. I've run into it. A lot of you have run into it. A lot of you have seen weird things that don't add up, that eventually I do want to find out what that means. But for now, what I'm focusing on is physical evidence I can find in the field that helps correlate this hominid species, because I want to be able to get resources, authorization, and support, so I'm not like destroying myself trying to, work full time, go to school full time, stay up until the middle of the night or more full time, and wake up early in the morning and then have to do it all over again. A lot of you probably don't realize this, but that's how my life was for that documentary that I put out. It destroyed me. That was too hard to be able to have to do all this other stuff and still manage to check out and explore the area every morning, stay up till 12 or 12 to 2 o'clock with these interactions, and then go to school, work, and then just do the whole thing all over again. I barely got any sleep, and I got like overweight, unhealthy, and it wasn't sustainable. I couldn't do that. Like I can't. And anyone that's put a lot of effort into this, that also has to support their own personal life, knows that it's really hard work. So that's one of the reasons I want to verify this hominid species, beyond the obvious fact that the more I know about it, the safer I feel in the forest, and the better I can explain to people what to look out for, so that they don't run into the same, fear as I did. Because that's scary, to not think that anything like this exists. Entertain the notion that they're real. Because I always thought it was entertaining, and I always assumed that they'd be far away from people in isolated areas. But it's a traumatized experience to run into the unknown like that, especially something that could potentially be very dangerous, and not have anyone to talk to. Not know if you're going to run into it again because you don't know what kind of signs it creates on the environment, what kind of sounds it makes, and that it even exists. So anyway, there you go. Again, thank you so much. Please, view my other videos and content if you enjoyed this. Like, subscribe, share. The more you follow me on this journey, the more that helps and supports me so that I can stay on the field longer. And the better we can understand this hominid, so that we all get what we want. We all have our own reasons for wanting to know more about this hominid species. Again, thank you very much, and I will be trying to engage with you guys in the comments as much as I can. Again, school is starting next week, so I'll try my best. See you next time on Modern Explorer.